What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to this video here about how America's power is declining. So, I've been seeing quite a few things lately talking about how the United States is not doing good. And I think that here in the US, a lot of us are still in denial about the whole thing, about the whole situation that we have created onto ourselves, really, our own downfall in a lot of ways. And we don't want to admit that America is declining. So today, I really want to take a look at this video here by TLDR News explaining what's gone wrong with the United States and where we might be headed in the future. So let's take a look.
Early this month, the Pew Research Center released its 2026 Spring Global Attitude Survey, a massive 37-country poll asking respondents what they think about other countries across the world. As always, there was lots of interesting stuff in there, but perhaps the most eye-catching finding was that for the first time in recent history, respondents had a more favorable view of China than the US.
What? Really? Man. I mean, again, like if I'm trying to be objective, like the American part of me is like, what? And also, this is the kind of stuff that you never see on like the American mainstream news, like talking about how people around the world are starting to prefer China over the United States. You never hear about that here in the US. This is stuff we should be talking about, not pretending like it's not happening. So the American part of me is, a bit shocked and like upset, but the logical part is like, given especially what the US and Donald Trump has done in the last year and a half now, I can see how America's reputation has been majorly hurt. It's just really sort of scary, sort of like just very disappointing to see it actually in the data. Like this is actually it's not just opinion. Like this is actually how people feel around the world. So that makes it very real.
This is a remarkable reversal and a symptom of the ongoing collapse in America's so-called soft power. So in this video, we're going to try and figure out why America's global appeal is declining and ask whether it actually matters.
Whether it matters to me? See, I mean, I guess this is why it's good to like hear news from like an outside perspective. Like more Americans, I really believe we have to check out stuff on the internet, on YouTube, that is not created by American news networks, because it gives a totally different perspective that you don't hear here in the US, really. So, like the fact that they're saying, well, the US is declining and American power is declining, but does it really matter? It's like, oh my God, that's what you guys think. Like, who cares if we have the US or what, like if they have power, good riddance. Like, whereas here, like my reaction as an American is like, what? This is terrible. Like, yes, this really matters. So, yeah, it's just really interesting, like very valuable to hear this stuff.
So let's start by diving into that Pew survey we mentioned. The first thing to say is that the reversal in US-China favorability isn't exclusively about America becoming less popular. It's also because China itself has become more popular.
Interesting. I just gotta say quickly, like, I do understand that America is vastly unpopular, especially right now. Like, I think in the past, people had some problems with Americans and how we do things, and like if we're annoying or ignorant or our culture or whatever. But it was all like, now it's way worse, I think. And let's be honest, it basically started when Donald Trump was elected president for the second time. And like, now I'm hearing all the time how America's reputation has been ruined. People don't want to travel here to the US. People don't like our trade policies, tariff things, trade wars. And honestly, it makes sense. Like, I can't really blame you, you know? It hurts to say, but it makes sense. But also, China's popularity is going up. Okay.
If we take a look at the median of all 37 countries polled, China has a net positive global image, with 51% expressing a favourable opinion and 39% an unfavourable one.
Wow.
If we break this down geographically, China has a pretty positive image in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia.
Interesting to hear what people think about China. Here in the US, a lot of people, like, Trump will flip-flop over whether China is our enemy but sometimes Trump says he really respects the Chinese and their economy and their leadership, and then he'll say China treats us unfairly. So Trump will just flip-flop. Like, normal American people don't really have a strong opinion about China. I think a lot of Americans think China provides us with a lot of cool stuff, like a lot of electronics and like cell phones and like, and maybe there's some jealousy there where Americans like think, could China become bigger and more powerful and more influential than the US? And that makes some Americans like scared and jealous. So there's a lot of those kinds of feelings.
With the notable exception of India. While China has a more mixed image in the so-called West and a generally negative image in East Asia and Israel. More generally though, poorer countries tend to have more positive views of China than richer ones do. This trend apparently holds within Europe too, with the richest countries in the poll, namely Sweden, Germany and the Netherlands, being less pro-China than the rest.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of people who have problem with like Chinese government and like how like their freedoms or how their society works. Like, I know people have disagreements with like their philosophy on life and stuff.
But even in richer countries, views of China have generally rebounded from their pandemic lows. Conversely, global opinion towards America has diminished markedly. Again, taking the median of all 37 countries polled, the US has a net negative global image, with 37% expressing a favourable view and 57% an unfavourable one.
See, there's something about seeing this like in like the data, like statistics, where it's like it's not. I've seen some videos on YouTube of like Europeans talking about the US, like, oh, I would never go there. Screw them, screw Trump. I don't want to get shot going to the US. And they screwed up the World Cup. And I've seen, but that's like a lot of opinions, which do matter. This is like just data from like tons of people where statistically it shows the United States is unfavorable. You can't argue with statistics. More people don't like us than like us. End of story. The majority of people do not like the US or are unfavorable towards us. And again, I feel like this is something that should be at the top of the news here in the United States. We should be, talking about this, talking about what's wrong, talking about how we can fix it. Instead, things just seem to be getting crazier here.
Favourable views have declined significantly in literally every country where data from last year is readily available, with the interesting exception of Mexico. As a consequence of all
Thank you. Thank you, Mexico. Thank you. We love your tacos. Okay, one country. Every other country they polled has dropped in favorability towards the US.
All of this. In many countries, the US China favorability gap has reversed in the past couple of years.
Holy cow. I did not know about that. Cuz China, like in the US, we do consider China to be like our rival, our opponent. And you could say we're losing to them when you look at this.
Including countries that aren't particularly keen on China. Germany, for instance, is one of the more China skeptic countries in Europe, with just 33% of respondents saying they have a positive
Wow.
image of China. But even fewer Germans, just 27%, say that they have a positive view of America at the moment.
Wow.
Remarkably, just 9 out of the 37 countries in the survey, namely Brazil, Ghana, Hungary, Poland, the Philippines, South Korea, India, Japan, and Israel, now say that they have more favorable views of the US than China.
Okay. There's some. I think this hurts extra for a lot of Americans because we think in the US we treat our people very well. That's what that's what we like to think. Um, there's a lot of problems with that idea, but we think we treat our people very well, and we think that in China they don't treat their people well. But the data doesn't reflect that opinion. So, is it the United States? Is it everyone is wrong? Everyone in the world is wrong and the US is great? Or is it the United States that's wrong about ourselves and we're not as great as we think? You you know what I mean? I think there's only one answer there.
So, why is this? Well, obviously, some of it has to do with Trump, who's not very popular outside of the US. Again, going by the median of all countries polled on this question, only 23% of respondents have confidence in Trump, well down compared to last year or Joe Biden, and the lowest of all world leaders polled, apart from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Perhaps unsurprisingly,
Below Putin? It's below it's below Putin. Donald Trump, people have less confidence in Donald Trump than Vladimir Putin. Oh my god.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Trump has seen the steepest declines in confidence among high-income countries, especially those in Europe. But interestingly, this includes declines among hard-right voters in those countries. However, it's not just Trump. More generally, there's been a sharp and widespread decline in the percentage of people saying that the US are a reliable partner or contributing to global peace and stability. Today, the rest of the world is more likely to see China as a reliable partner, as contributing to global peace and stability abroad, and as taking other countries' interests into account.
Wow. I understand if people don't think the US is reliable, especially with all the crazy tariffs and trade threats and threatening to take over Greenland, threatening to take over Canada. Like just insane. I do understand. We look insane. Again, mostly because Donald Trump is our president and he makes us look insane. But we elected him, so we have to take that responsibility. We caused it. We knew what we were voting for, or at least we should have. Um, Contributing to peace and stability around the world. That's actually something that a lot of Americans take pride in. You know, even there's a lot of Americans who do not like Donald Trump and don't like what he's doing and still like to think that the US does some good, like we are a force for peace and stability. The world doesn't think so. The world thinks China does more good than the US. Man, I've never seen data like this. I knew people didn't have a good sentiment towards the US, but comparing it to China and what Americans think of China and seeing it all like this really changes my whole perspective on this. This is much worse than I thought for us.
Conversely, they see China as less likely than the US to interfere with other countries' internal politics. Of course, this probably has at least something.
I mean, yeah, we love to interfere in stuff for no reason, like Iran. Good example.
To do with Trump, but it's also presumably down to the fact that for the past decade or so, US foreign policy has whiplashed every 4 years with changes in the White House.
Sure.
You get the idea. America's global appeal, what's sometimes called soft power, is on the wane. But if he's watching this video, at this point, Trump might say, who cares? After all, Trump has basically spent the past decade or so arguing that an over-reliance on soft power and an unwillingness to really exercise hard power has led America to being constantly ripped off by other countries. And, well, to be fair, in certain cases, Trump has been able to leverage America's undeniably immense hard power via...
I see what they're saying. When they say, who cares about America's soft power? I think that means just like our influence, just as a large, important, wealthy nation. It's Donald Trump who doesn't care about that. He cares about the hard power, the ability for the United States to literally strong arm and force policies, force other countries to do things with literal threats. Now I understand what it means, where Donald Trump doesn't care about the soft power of the U.S. because it's the hard power that we're using.
Tariffs and threats of military action to achieve certain policy objectives. But we see at least 3 caveats worth mentioning here. First, trading soft power for hard power can yield short-term wins, but it will probably make it harder for America to achieve its strategic objectives further down the line.
Yes.
Both because other...
Yes. Because when you do things that we are doing, nobody likes you. It's really like common sense. Yeah, like just talking about it out loud and seeing all this data, like the American people, we should be way, way more upset about Donald Trump. And I know this video is trying to argue that it's not all Donald Trump, and that's true, but I do think a lot of it is Donald Trump.
The line. Both because other countries will try and insulate themselves from their hard power capabilities, and because soft power can act as a sort of geopolitical lubricant, making other countries follow your lead almost by default. Second, soft power plausibly matters more in a multipolar world, because other countries have options. If you're the only hegemon in a unipolar world, as the US arguably was until quite recently, you don't really need soft power. You're the only big kid in the playground, so you call the shots. But when there's another big kid in the playground, in this metaphor we're obviously talking about China, you can't be too rough with the other kids, because they might buddy up with the other big kid, and then you're outmatched.
That's a really good analogy, honestly. Something we don't think about in the US. I think here in the United States, we've had it so good for so long that we just think it would never end. We think, yeah, America is the greatest, and everybody wants to come here, and everyone wants to do business with us, and yeah, that's how it's been for years. And a lot of people our whole lives, it's been great. The United States has been great, with, of course, bad things here and there, but we've fallen into this way of thinking here in America that it will always be like that. America will always be great, and nothing can possibly stop that. We're literally witnessing the decline of the United States, and it makes sense that it's going hand in hand with the rise of China.
Third, advocates of hard power often operate on the assumption, popular among so-called realists, that in geopolitics, states simply respond to strategic incentives. Therefore, because it has more hard power than almost anyone else, America can easily coerce other states into doing what it wants. America can just exercise its hard power by, say, threatening military action or economic sanctions, and other states can't really fight back.
It's just so horrible thinking about us doing that. Like, yeah, we've always been able to do things like that, but that's when you need the restraint and the relationships and the trustworthiness to not do horrible things to your allies. Why would we do this to our friends, our allies?
So it becomes in their self-interest to just do what America wants, and on the realist assumption, that's what they should end up doing. But this realist assumption overlooks the fact that governments are more responsive to domestic political incentives, and most general publics are not hyper-pragmatic realists. In other words, if Trump threatens to hit some country with tariffs or military action, unless they make some concession, the government of that country usually doesn't go, oh well, the US has more leverage, so we should do what Trump wants. Rather, most of the time, they push back harder, in part because they want to maintain some sort of deterrence, but also because, in many cases, it's what their electorate wants.
And I think in the past, when people weren't really sure, leaders weren't really sure how to deal with Trump, like if they should just try to get along with Donald Trump, appease him, pretend to be friends. Now it feels like more and more world leaders are willing to openly, like, say their real thoughts about Donald Trump and be like, no, we're not putting up with this. We're not working with some crazy person. It feels like more and more that's happening too.
Brazil is a good example of this. Trump has been threatening massive tariffs against Brazil, in part because he apparently wants better market access for US payment processors, namely Visa and MasterCard. But the Brazilian government hasn't responded by going, oh well, tariffs will be bad for the economy, so let's just do what Trump wants, even though this might be, in some narrow sense of the word, the rational thing to do. Rather, President Lula has come out swinging, in large part because it plays well with the Brazilian electorate, as evidenced by the fact that Lula has since jumped in the polls. Either way,
yeah, and not putting up with Trump and his crazy threats is popular, as it should be.
this Trump term will present an interesting test case. For most of post-war history, the US has been both a hard and soft superpower. So Trump's second term will tell us if just being a hard superpower is sufficient.
Jeez. Okay. That was a lot. That was eye-opening. As an American, highly disturbing. But as I like to remember, important. Important for Americans to see this, to acknowledge it, to understand. Because there's a lot of denial still going on in the US. So, I hated this and I loved it at the same time for different reasons, you know. But it was interesting seeing like what the world really thinks about us and sort of the direction we might be headed and China and yeah. So I this was good. I am glad I watched this. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on all this, especially if you're somewhere in the world outside of the United States, you know, hearing your perspective, that'd be really cool. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.